Chapter 9. The reversionists were taking a break from the deep conversations. Kenneth approached Lyra and told her that he was sorry for being impatient with the teachings. Lyra ignored him at first, but then told him that he did not need her approval or forgiveness to feel better. She said that Gabriel had told her that worthiness should come from the inside and external factors should not affect him. Kenneth agreed with her and said that his frustrations was something he should deal with himself, as she was not responsible for him. Lyra was glad that he understood and then joined Gabriel in his talks with the other beings. Kenneth watched her as she walked away and swallowed a big lump of heartbreak. William saw Kenneth and walked over to ask him how he was holding up. Kenneth said that it had been rough for many days and he just needed some alone time now. He felt overstimulated by all the impressions he had had and all the knowledge he had to integrate. William told him that he understood him. However, the teachings were important for them as they needed to pass their trials. Now more than ever did they need to work overtime in order to save their souls. Kenneth agreed, but said that he had a lot of doubt if they were even doing the right thing. He argued that they really had no clue about what had happened, except that it fitted into Gabriel's philosophical framework. William said that they did not need to be certain what happened and how they will be able to reverse it, but as long as they were growing, they must do something right. He asked Kenneth if they should join Gabriel and hear the next segment of his teachings. Kenneth agreed and walked with him. Gabriel preached about the One and called it a monad that was transcendent of all dualistic characteristics. He explained that the One did not subside in a realm of dualism, but only pure monistic qualities could describe it. And not only did they describe the One, in union they were equal to the One. Not the names, but the things they represented. He postulated that all monistic qualities could be boiled down to three: being, awareness, and bliss, all of which were pure. This triad of qualities were in union sufficient in pointing to the One. It could not possess one quality and not the others, as they were tied to its essence. Pure being was the ontological foundation of all existence, the reality that simply was without dependence, condition, or cause. It is not one being among others, but the very act of being itself. Everything that existed participated in being, but pure being did not participate in anything. It was wholly self-sufficient. Because it existed through itself, it gave rise to all forms of goodness and actuality. In this sense, pure being was both the cause and measure of all that was real. It could not have an opposite, for non-being was not a real contrary, but the absence of being. Thus, pure being was absolute plenitude, existence that could neither increase nor diminish. Pure awareness was the self-presence of being to itself, the luminous knowing by which reality discloses itself. Unlike empirical consciousness, which was always aware of something, pure awareness was self-luminous. It was aware without distinction between observer and observation. Awareness did not depend on objects to exist. Rather, all objects depended on it to appear. Anything that could not, in principle, be perceived or have any causal influence was indistinguishable from non-existence, since all objects known are known only through perception. Pure awareness was ontologically self-present, requiring nothing outside itself to be revealed, for it was revelation itself. Pure bliss was the unconditioned joy inherent in self-sufficient being and self-present awareness. It was not pleasure in the sensory or emotional sense, but the intrinsic harmony of the real knowing itself perfectly. Where there was no lack, contradiction, or separation, there was perfect peace, and this peace was bliss. Pure bliss was therefore the dynamic equilibrium of the divine nature. It was the expression of being's fullness and awareness's unity, the self-communion of the absolute with itself. Gabriel continued discussing the consequences of these qualities. He explained that from pure being arose goodness. To be was already to affirm. Pure being, by its very nature, affirmed itself and all that can be derived from it. This was why being and goodness were convertible. To exist was to be good, for evil had no substance of its own. Evil was only the distortion of being. He told them to consider if the good had an opposite which was evil. Being opposites meant that they were co-defined. However, that meant that the good could be defined from evil. Then it would not be pure goodness, since evil would be part of it. Thus the nature of goodness was a pure, independent, and absolute quality. Any perception of evil would be understood as a distortion or absence of the good, rather than something equal in nature or status to the good. Just as darkness was the absence of light, Evil was not a pure quality, but an illusion the mind created. Therefore, evil did not have a pure, indivisible quality like the good had, but rather it was a distorted manifestation of the good. Evil could not exist in isolation. It was always contingent upon the existence of the good as a point of reference. He added that the absence of the good could lead to feelings of emptiness, despair, or moral confusion. He claimed that this aligned with the idea that human beings are oriented toward the good, and its absence could result in negative emotional and psychological states. Gabriel explained carefully that while evil could highlight the importance of the good, reducing the good to merely the absence of evil oversimplified the ethical landscape. This fallacy created a reactive moral framework, where moral action was solely driven by the desire to avoid negative outcomes rather than striving for positive ones. William said that it sounded like Charlie had adapted that worldview in that he saw the highest form of pleasure as being free from pain. Gabriel said that it was a dangerous worldview since the practitioner would live their life from the ego rather from the soul. The good sought towards union and well-being of all of reality. Gabriel continued saying that the material world was imperfect due to emanation from the One, which created a distortion of the good. Being further from the One loses the purity of pure goodness, resulting in imperfection and a potential drift toward evil through misalignment with the source. Just as light could always be emptied or filled into the void by just increasing the energy content, so does misalignment always progress towards the good, from whence everything came, or regress away from the good. In the material world, where actions were inherently non-perfect, one could never reach perfection. The only good a being could do is having constructed a good intention. By definition, all actions leading to the completion of the goal of a good intention are inherently good actions as long as they were done with the good intention in mind. He asked them to suppose that an actor with an intention have an infinite amount of time to fulfill the actor's intended goal. A good intention was one that could be completed only in infinity many subtasks. Conversely, an evil intention was one that could either be completed with finitely many subtasks or not completed at all. He explained that unless the intention was aimed towards the highest good which was unreachable, then the subsequent actions were not considered good. So all intentions had their goodness measured only by their directionality and not their extent, since the extent was always infinite. Since perfection was unattainable in finite action within the material realm, any intention truly aligned with the good demanded an endless, unceasing series of steps. Each of these subtasks, no matter how small, contributed to the ultimate goal, embodying an infinite commitment to the good. He explained that like an indestructible light bulb, which intensity is controlled by a dimmer switch, completely turning it off could be done with finite tasks in one direction. This was an action that progressed away from the good, which was considered an evil action, which was apparent by the finitude of the goal to reach zero brightness. Conversely, increasing intensity could be extended into an infinite number of subtasks and was considered good if the intention was to reach infinite brightness and not just a finite brightness. In the material world, an intention aimed at the highest good was always a good action. True goodness was an ongoing journey of alignment, while evil resulted from a failure to engage with the endlessness of that pursuit. The One was a transcendent reality that material existence can never fully encapsulate. Thus, a good action became less about a finite achievement and more about the eternal alignment of intention, embodying a process that reflected the limitless nature of the good. Instead of focusing on quick fixes or one-time achievements, one should push for sustainable, ongoing impact. One should think about how each action contributes to a larger, enduring purpose. By valuing each step as part of an infinite journey, one appreciates the quality of each action rather than just the end goal. In an infinite model, each action was part of a broader, adaptive process. Gabriel promoted collaboration, innovation, and resilience, as this approach allowed for shifts and adaptations, helping in prioritizing actions that contributed to a higher, ongoing harmony. Gabriel clarified that good intentions always required infinite subtasks to complete, but an intention requiring infinite subtasks was not necessarily good. A good intention must be constructive, meaning the intention was to create. If the intention was to destroy, then it was evil. Any part of the intention that destroyed not in order to create more should be left out of a good intention. This ensured that the intention remained purely aligned with creation and avoids unnecessary harm. A good intention must also be pure, meaning achieving any part of the subtasks should not independently satisfy the overall aim. Each component of the intention should also work cohesively toward the ultimate goal, without being splintered into separate, independently achievable objectives. This indivisibility requires a pure alignment with the good, ensuring the intention remains fully dedicated to its higher purpose. He continued explaining the nature of pure awareness. The one as self-awareness meant it was devoid of any object, process, or distinction between subject and object. It was not aware of anything outside itself because there was nothing other than itself. It was pure, non-relational awareness, existing as its own essence. Limited awareness often involved a reflective process where a subject thought about its awareness. The one did not involve such processes. Reflection implied a subtle duality, one part of the mind observing another. The one, being self-awareness, transcended this entirely as it were beyond experience and experiencer. The one's awareness was not a dynamic act of knowing. The one was absolute knowing by being. It did not do anything, become anything, or experience anything. It simply was, the ground of all reality, the source of all potentialities, without itself being a thing among things. The one, as self-awareness, was eternally whole and complete. It did not depend on any external validation, change, or addition. Therefore, there was no knower or known in the one. It was pure awareness, pure knowing, eternally self-contained. Since the one was self-awareness, there was no other to be aware of. Gabriel pointed to a large pear tree in the garden. He explained that in the moment of seeing the tree, one were aware of the tree. He explained that meta-awareness occurred when one recognized, I am aware of the tree. It was not a separate moment in time, but an extension of the current moment. One were experiencing the tree directly. Simultaneously, one were aware that one were aware of it. Both of these things happened simultaneously because recognition of awareness could be part of the same conscious experience. It was not a separate act or moment, but a shift in the focus of one's attention. One were not thinking about the fact that one were aware. One were just aware of both the tree and one's awareness of the tree at once. This did not require memory or a delay. It was an integrated aspect of consciousness, where awareness and meta-awareness coexist in the present. When one said, I am aware that I am aware, one were not relying on memory. Instead, one were engaging in a direct, immediate awareness of one's current state of awareness. When one said, I am aware that I am aware, one were not remembering past awareness, but were instead identifying with the present awareness one were experiencing right now. One were directly experiencing awareness, and in that moment, also recognizing that one were aware. It did not depend on recalling past awarenesses, but simply acknowledged the ongoing experience. The act of identifying with the present moment was when one shifted one's attention to become aware of one's awareness itself. Instead of just experiencing something directly, one were now also aware of the fact that one were experiencing it. This identification did not require a delay or memory of the past. It was an intrinsic characteristic of conscious experience. He made clear that this form of meta-awareness did not apply to the one, as the one did not recognize anything since it was unchanged. There was nothing outside the one, and its self-awareness was caused by being itself. However, the meta-awareness manifested in the one's emanation. The world soul recognized it in the same way as individual souls did by undergoing change, by shifting attention to its own awareness as it unfolded in time. Nous, being unchanging, contained its meta-awareness within its own identity. It was thinking itself. Because it was internally divided, it could contemplate itself and therefore contemplate its own awareness. He then explained pure bliss. He said that love without expectation arose from pure bliss, since the blissful being was already eternally satisfied. The one was self-resonating because it was all-loving. Its love was not a reaching toward another, but the eternal affirmation of its own being. It expected nothing, desired nothing, and lacked nothing, for it was already whole. Its bliss was the still joy of perfect sufficiency, the eternal satisfaction of being complete in itself. From this fullness arose all things, not through intention or need, but through the natural overflow of its boundless harmony. The good intention, which demanded an infinite, constructive commitment, was nothing less than the pursuit of this bliss. Since bliss was the state of perfect, infinite union, any intention aimed at less than an infinite, unceasing series of steps was inherently a pursuit of a finite, fleeting pleasure. Gabriel concluded that the One was therefore the monad that was pure being, pure awareness, and pure bliss. These three were not separable attributes, they were one, indivisible essence. The One could not possess existence without self-awareness of that existence, and that perfect self-awareness was inherently complete and blissful. William said that he was already aware and felt like he existed, but he asked how one might become blissful. Gabriel said that individual souls could not attain the same pure bliss as the One, but they could seek to imitate the One by choosing not to identify with limiting beliefs. He explained that all souls experienced two kinds of resistance. One was the natural resistance that came from their body and essentially was based on evolutionary conditions such as survival. When the body reacted to situations it was put in, then one's soul would experience a tension that it had no control over. The other kind was embodied resistance. This was the resistance that occurred after the natural resistance had taken place and was determined by the soul's attachment to what it had experienced. It was like feeling anger and then concluding that one was angry. The soul had control over the embodied resistance only in that it could reflect over its experience and choose not to identify with it. It could not choose to identify with it, since identification often happened subconsciously, but transcendence of identification happened by the free will of the soul. Basically, identification was the process by which the individual soul merged with a thought, feeling, or perception, creating a contraction. Contraction produced embodied resistance, leading to attachment, judgment, and actions misaligned with the good. Gabriel asked them to think about how the nature of their judgment was not according to their free will. He pointed out that free will needed to be free of the past, and their judgment was deeply rooted in their past. Their judgment was therefore not free, but borrowed from their memory. Only by choosing to let go of the identification which had caused the judgment would they choose freely. He pointed out that the body identified with experiences all the time, and it was up to the soul to sort out these identifications by using the one tool it had, which was by transcending identification. Anything that did not resonate with one's awareness should be let go of, and souls were absolutely capable of doing it. This could only be done through deep reflection on which identities one was subscribed to. Simply put, free will was the simple choice of following the will of God. The will of God was defined as mindful attention and good intention, and could only be attained by a state of non-resistance and clarity. True free will was precisely the choice to surrender to this state, rather than to the ego's demands of identification. The freedom of the soul was the release of the will that insisted, not the power to impose. When one chose to align with God's will, the conditions for instant transformation are met, and true freedom is realized as the absence of inner conflict. Gabriel made clear that sometimes identification was tied to a deeper root, and this root would be needed to found and let go of by reflection in order to let go of the subsequent identifications. The One was pure bliss because it was already eternally whole and complete. It expected nothing, desired nothing, and lacked nothing. When one's soul, through the practice of transcending identification, stopped insisting on its finite demands, it stopped feeling lack. When the ego dissolved, all that remained was the pure, unconditioned awareness inherited from the One. This was the instant transformation, the sudden cessation of inner conflict that perfectly embodied the One's will. The bliss one achieved was not a pleasure, but the still joy of perfect sufficiency, the unified, harmonious state that was the closest an individual soul could come to imitating the One's eternal, self-resounding bliss. He explained that instant transformation was the sudden awakening of free will's highest expression, the mind fully attending without judgment or attachment, perfectly embodying the will of God. It was the moment when inner conflict ceased and the soul aligned with the forces of the good, harmony, unity, constructivity, and infinite potential. This awakening was not earned by effort or accumulated knowledge, but arose spontaneously when the mental barriers of contractions dissolved. Through this transformation, right response arose effortlessly, balanced between passivity and proactivity, manifesting the pure emanation of the One within the finite world. It was not a gradual ascent, but a sudden, qualitative shift that occurred when one truly aligned with the will of God as mindful attention and released the ego's grip on identification. This alignment was the right response, leading to a unified, harmonious state of being. He explained that mindfulness sharpened our awareness of what others were going through by helping us to be present with them as they were, without projecting our judgments or biases. When one was fully attentive, one can sense the nuances of others' experiences, their joys, struggles, and sorrows. This attentive presence laid the groundwork for empathy because it allowed one to truly see and understand others' pain without letting one's own reactions get in the way. Judgment and attachment were deeply rooted in identification. By cultivating non-judgment and non-attachment, by using the free will of one's soul, mindfulness allowed one to accept others as they are, even if they're struggling, without feeling the need to evaluate or fix them. This created a safe space for compassionate responses, where one can offer support without an agenda. One was not trying to change their experience. Instead, one was fully present to witness it with an open heart. Mindfulness fostered a sense of interconnectedness, an awareness of no-self, or a loosening of the boundaries between oneself and others. When one was mindful, one felt a natural resonance with others, realizing that their suffering and joy were not entirely separate from one's own. This deep sense of connection gave rise to empathy and compassion, as one saw others not as others, but as beings who share in the same tapestry of existence. Mindfulness encouraged self-compassion, which teaches one how to treat themselves kindly and patiently. By learning to be compassionate toward ourselves in moments of difficulty, one naturally extended this same understanding towards others. In this way, compassion grew from within and expands outward. He explained further that mindful attention could foster an environment conducive to logical reasoning by enhancing clarity, reducing emotional interference, and promoting open-mindedness. However, it did not inherently guarantee logical reasoning, as it was not focused on formal logic. Instead, it complemented logical reasoning by promoting awareness, allowing individuals to engage with problems more effectively. For optimal reasoning, mindful awareness could be enhanced with mentalization, critical thinking skills, and formal logical frameworks. A complete lack of judgment did not mean avoiding understanding or critical thinking. Rather, it involved an open-minded approach that sought to comprehend experiences and observations without preconceived notions or biases. Non-judgmental observation encouraged curiosity and a desire to understand. It allowed individuals to explore situations and people more deeply, considering context and motivations without immediate evaluation. By practicing non-judgment, one could observe thoughts, feelings, and behaviors more clearly. This awareness could lead to insights and a richer understanding of complex issues, fostering empathy and compassion. Non-judgment did not equate to disengagement. Instead, it promoted a mindful engagement with the world, where individuals sought to comprehend diverse perspectives and experiences without rushing to conclusions. Likewise, non-attachment should not imply indifference to relationships or responsibilities. Non-attachment encouraged individuals to be present in relationships without being overly dependent on specific outcomes or the actions of others. This could lead to healthier, more balanced interactions where love and care were expressed freely rather than from a place of neediness. Non-attachment did not imply neglecting responsibilities. Instead, it allowed individuals to fulfill their obligations with a sense of duty and purpose rather than fear of loss or failure. It promoted taking responsibility for one's actions and relationships without becoming emotionally overwhelmed by them. By practicing non-attachment, individuals could navigate challenges in relationships and responsibilities with greater resilience. They could respond to situations without being emotionally reactive, allowing for clearer decision-making and healthier responses. In conclusion, Gabriel said, these were the metaphysics and ethics the reversionists were looking for. The ultimate reality was the one, defined by the inseparable triad of pure being, pure awareness, and pure bliss. Ethical action flowed from this source, asserting that goodness was contingent with existence, while evil was merely the distortion or absence of the good. Since perfection was impossible in the material world, true ethicality lied not in finite achievement, but in a good intention, which must be purely constructive and demand an infinite, unceasing series of subtasks aimed at the highest good. The individual soul's path to spiritual alignment and an imitation of bliss was found through transcendence of identification, the free choice to release attachment to limiting beliefs. This practice cultivated mindful attention and actions based on good intentions, which was defined as the will of God, leading to instant transformation, a sudden, harmonious cessation of inner conflict that perfectly aligned the soul with the unifying, creative forces of reality. The crowd was cheerful as they thought they had found out the practice would make them pass the trial. After all, they thought that God could only judge them based on their free will, and if their free will truly was transcending identification, then they just needed to sort out what they were identified as and let the beliefs go that were limiting to their true being. Gabriel explained that observers were not different from what they observed, even if it was caused by natural resistance. When an observer observed anger, then anger was part of them. When an observer observed love, then love was part of them. This point was important to make since, by observing something, they were already making an identification of themselves as an observer. Only when the distinction between what they observed and themselves dissolved could they truly non-identify, since the observer itself dissolved. The observer was not different from what they observed. The observer was the observed. But when there was only observation, there was neither observer nor observed, only awareness. Awareness simply observed anger without the observer by seeing the total movement of anger without resistance. He told them to consider a mirror and a reflection in that mirror. The mirror, the intelligence that made the observed intelligible to the observer. When the mind was totally attentive, awareness acted like a highly polished, undistorted mirror in which the entire content of a mixed consciousness could be seen clearly as a reflection. Conditioning happened when the mind identified as an outside observer looking in at the mirror. In truth, pure awareness was the mirror and not an outside observer looking into the mirror. There was no one looking into the mirror, and the observer was itself a reflection in the mirror. The mind that constructed the illusory observer was not different from the content of the same mind. Therefore, the reflection in the mirror was the observer and not different from it. The mirror was the true nature of their soul. It simply reflected intelligently without involvement. Pure awareness had complete self-knowledge and was completely self-present, and therefore knew everything that was happening in the mirror. But it was not different from the mirror. In essence, the free will of the soul was exercised by realizing the illusion of the separate observer, thereby achieving transcendence of identification. It was not the power to choose what to feel or think, but the power to choose not to merge with it. Gabriel said that recognizing the true nature of pure awareness was the only way of reconnecting with the One, since its pure awareness was that mirror. The crowd attempted to be the mirror instead of the observer. The reversionists were engulfed in Gabriel's teachings, and it had opened their eyes to their true essence. William suggested that they should bring this news to the church and maybe try and convince the believers that transcending identification was the key to their salvation. And maybe the priest had some insight they could use. Lyra wanted to stay with Gabriel, but this time Kenneth and Frederick wanted to join William and Linus. They then set off north towards the church.